Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Mind Split Cafe. My man Matt, we have a familiar face here with us today. How
Yeah,
you
we
doing today,
do.
Matt?
What's going on, guys? How are you? Doc, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here again, in the best
Again,
possible way.
Again. See
This is the
what is
return of
yes.
the
this?
Jedi,
Your
right?
third time
This is
on the
Return of the Jedi.
third time on the show, right?
Is this gonna be like SNL, where eventually I'll get like a jacket if I
Yeah,
We
if
can
I do
get you a
this?
jacket.
we'll
You
get
Yeah.
you
could
a
probably
jacket and a coffee mug.
start co-hosting if you want to, Doc. I mean, fill in for either me or Chris. So,
Honorary co-host. You could probably
yeah.
play a trick on me one of these days and just like have one of you guys not be here, and I wouldn't even know I was a host. We just chat.
Yeah,
We just chat.
there you
I
go.
like that.
Yeah.
We might pull that one on you. Then you would never come back. You'd be like, "No, I'm not messing with these guys anymore." So, yeah. Nah, but welcome back to the show, Doc. And this week we want to talk about something kind of different. I know last time we talked about gambling and the addiction to gambling, right? We had that really interesting conversation about sports betting and the correlation between the advertiser and the actual act of, the actual addiction of gambling, right? But this week is different. So, um what are we talking about this week, Doc?
Well, so this week we were going to talk about alcohol because it is actually this month in April, Alcohol Awareness Month, which is it seems like an odd name for a month because we all know alcohol is there, but at the same
Yeah.
time, I don't think people realize how big of a problem it actually is, and so
Mm-hmm.
I like to think of it more as Alcohol Normalization Awareness Month, so that we can all really better understand what's going on with alcohol right now in terms of societal trends, but then also in terms of health, public health, to make informed decisions around alcohol rather than just feeling pressured to go with the flow in certain situations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love it. I think this is going to be a great topic. And I have a very bland, very simple first question to start with. And I believe it's just going to avalanche into multiple questions. But the first easy question is, what factors contribute to someone developing an alcohol abuse issue?
Yeah. Well, so I would say that the factors that contribute to developing an addiction to anything, and alcohol would certainly be part of that, always comes down to, well, there's a few aspects. One of the aspects for alcohol does have something to do with genetics. There's some folks who have an easier time getting to the point where their body craves alcohol than others. We call that their trigger point, at which, when you drink a certain amount, your body's going to start asking for that. So genetics play one part of it. However, really, the number one reason why people would develop an addiction is if they are drinking to the point of intoxication very frequently, which usually happens because you're using it to cope with feelings. And that's that really common theme. Most addictions take root because it becomes a staple of your life, and it becomes a staple of your life because we have negative feelings we've got to cope with every single day. And if that's your go to, you're going to drink a lot.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense actually.
No, a question I have, kind of to piggyback on that, is I get some people are using it as a band-aid, right? They're trying to cope with anxiety or suppressed, whatever feelings or emotions or whatever, right? Can you also do it just to, that feeling of that buzz, that you're chasing that buzz? You're not so much trying to suppress or band-aid anything, but you're chasing that
That high, you're chasing the
yeah,
high.
that high or that
Mm-hmm.
intoxication of that euphoric feeling for that split, that couple of minutes where you're just like, oh, this is it, you know? So can you do
Mm-hmm.
that as well? Or do you have to be emotionally band-aiding, or suppressing?
It's possible to just be chasing after euphoria or feeling buzzed or enjoying that. That said, when we think about like what's an addiction, right? Because alcohol is all over, and there's a lot of people who use alcohol and do not have many, if any, negative repercussions from it. When we think about what an addiction is, one core component of that is that you keep doing something even when it starts causing you problems. And so that's when, like, if you were just enjoying the feeling of being buzzed, but on the flip side, like your family's angry at you, or you're gaining weight, or your liver is starting to bleed enzymes, like leak that out into your blood. Um, you might be like, hey, there might be a better way to have fun that doesn't
Yeah.
have such major problems in my life. Addiction is where you notice those things, but you keep doing it anyway. So I would say that the number of folks, at least those who get to me as a practitioner, who are just doing it because they like how it feels, are very low, because oftentimes by the time they're looking for a therapist for help, they're doing that because some bad things have happened and they still can't seem to
Mm-hmm.
stop.
Hmm.
And
Interesting.
so to kind of compound off that, what are some of the, addiction is continually doing something despite negative effects. So, and that's kind of what you just explained to us. So, what what are some of these negative effects? I know you kind of went over a couple of them, but what are some of these negative effects that someone could be experiencing and just kind of pushing to the back of their head, but in reality they have
Mhm.
an alcohol use disorder?
Yeah, well, so there's the ones that are really in your face. They're very salient, right? So if you are drunk, and because you're drunk, you are getting angry with loved ones and treating them poorly, or if you're putting yourself or others in hazardous situations by driving, or your emotions are unstable, or you're going to work drunk, and that causes some blowback for you. There's a lot of situations where it's very clear, because I drank, this is now happening. There's others, though, that take place a little more under the surface in terms of long term health issues that we're finding they just mount slowly over time. And to be perfectly honest with you, alcohol is one of the most caustic substances that you can put into your body if you're doing it regularly, in particular over time. Like, you name a body system, whether or not it's your brain, your bones, your throat, your stomach, your liver. There's all parts of your body that can be negatively affected if you're drinking consistently over time. So there's the stuff that's really clear up front, like a one-to-one sort of, because I got drunk, these bad things happened. Just thinking about criminal activity,
Yeah.
unwanted sexual activity. There's a lot of things that can happen, all the way to these more chronic long-term concerns.
Mm.
That's interesting. So, and I have this question in my head. I just hopefully I can expel it properly so you understand. But you had mentioned that alcohol and alcohol use is very normalized in our society. Everyone drinks, or not everyone, but it's very easy to obtain. It's at every corner store. So,
Mm-hmm.
do you think a lot of alcohol use disorders go undiagnosed because of how common it is in our society?
Oh my goodness, no doubt. I mean, there's sometimes when folks come to see me, and they're really struggling and needing to make a change, but they're looking around like everyone in my family drinks like I do. Or they
Mm-hmm.
look at their friend group and they're like, "All my friends are drinking," and they start to realize, wait, it's like, if my liver's doing this sort of thing, or if I'm having these troubles, like, what does that mean about these folks? And it kind of turns that around a little bit. But absolutely, I think that there's a lot of behavior that is just seen in some circles as normal. Like, if we think about like stereotypical, say, like drunken fraternity parties, or people at college who are, say, getting intoxicated 3 days a week, like very intoxicated, perhaps. In fact, those types of behaviors, if you project those out over a long enough period, don't lead you to where you probably want to go in
Mm-hmm.
terms of your health, at the very least. Shorter periods of time, sometimes it can work out okay, but even then, like when we think about alcohol poisonings and the percentages of sexual assaults that take place on campuses under the influence of alcohol versus not, you start to see all these very, very clear correlations. That being said, you bring up the point of normalization. There was a post that I made on LinkedIn that has really blown up, more so than perhaps I even thought it would, comparing what's going on with alcohol right now to opioids. And to me, that the reason why I posted about that was that I think that it's very salient to folks that we are in an opioid epidemic, and we talk about it, and we hear about it on the news and in politics. Yet there's basically twice as many people dying every year from acute and chronic alcohol related
Wow.
problems than there are dying from opioids, quite literally. The count we have right now from the NIDA and NIAAA is 178,000 people a year are dying due to alcohol. And
Wow.
for opioids, it's about 88,000. And
Wow.
even if we, yeah, it's double, and you wouldn't know it based on the way the news covers it. And even if you think about like the word drugs, we oftentimes say alcohol and other drug like and drugs or drugs and
Yeah.
alcohol as if
Yep.
alcohol isn't a drug, even though it is, right? It's almost this way of we're just going to break this one drug off so that it doesn't get stigmatized
They've got
by
a great
this.
the alcohol, the lobbyists for alcohol, they've got a great marketing team, right? Because you're exactly right.
Yeah.
They don't
Mhm.
when we say drugs, we think of like actually hard drugs and not
Alcohol.
liquid substance, right? Like alcohol. But you're exactly
Mhm.
right. It is a drug.
Yep.
Yeah,
Wow.
no, it is absolutely a drug, and it's actually shockingly more lethal, honestly, than any drug that would ever be approved, even by, say, the FDA for medical purposes. So there's something in medicine called a therapeutic index or a therapeutic ratio, which is the ratio between the therapeutic dose of a medicine and the amount of that medicine that would kill 50% of people if they took that much of it. We call that the LD50, the lethal dose 50. For alcohol, the blood alcohol content that's the LD50 is about 0.45. If someone alcohol naive got up to a 0.45, 50% of them would be dead. So
And
if you
that's,
think about
sorry to interrupt, but dead due to alcohol poisoning or some
yeah,
other factor.
alcohol poisoning,
Okay.
Wow.
so due to the alcohol. So if
So
you think
40 is
about
basically 40% of your blood is alcohol at that point four
yeah,
level.
not that much. It's 0.45%. So a little under half of 1% of your
Gotcha.
blood would be alcohol. But it's still that's is a very high number to get up to that point, particularly if you are alcohol naive. But if you if you think about the therapeutic dose of alcohol, like when you really feel like if we say that's 0.08 when you're drunk,
Yeah.
that's only like what six times as many
Yep.
the therapeutic dose to the lethal dose. That would be like taking 12 Advil and it potentially being lethal. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? Like if you
Jeez.
think
Yeah,
about
absolutely.
Yeah.
how close that is. Even if you think about prescription opioids and people who are misusing them, like if you were to if a therapeutic dose of hydrocodone is like 10 milligrams, 60 milligrams, like that, it's not even in the same ballpark in terms of lethality. With alcohol, is so lethal in terms of that ratio. And so it's which isn't to say that people should be misusing opioids either, or that that's safe to do, but just thinking about the incongruency there
Yeah.
around
Yeah, no
alcohol
kidding.
versus other drugs and how we don't look at them the same way.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that kind of blows my mind thinking of it. I mean, there's just a minor amount between lethal and non-lethal with alcohol, and with other harder drugs, it's a little bit more of a spread. I never even thought of that, I never really thought to think that way when it comes to alcohol and lethal dosages and therapeutic dosages. That's interesting.
Hmm.
It puts
Yeah,
a
and
whole
if we got
different
a BAC
perspective
calc,
on it. Yeah.
yeah, I was just gonna say if we got a BAC calculator out, I don't have one up right now in front of me, but it's actually not that hard to get up to 0.45 if you wanted to, right? When we think about how could someone kill themselves accidentally, uh, like a handle of like vodka has about 17 drinks in it. I think for most people who aren't very large, that would get them up pretty close. I don't know exactly where it would be, but like if you were to do 17 shots in an hour, I mean that sounds like a lot, but you could just go out and buy that, right? For what?
Yeah.
Not that much money.
Yeah.
It's and that's part of why again when we're saying like we really got to pay attention to alcohol too, not to turn a blind eye to it because we've been drinking it forever.
Yeah, and that last little statement that we've been doing this forever, I believe is going to answer my question. But so like if I go out to a restaurant with some friends and they're like, "Hey, what drink do you want? Do you want a beer or you want this?" "Oh, I'm not drinking." What is
Mhm.
always the first question that comes out of someone's mouth when you say I'm not drinking? Why?
Hmm.
So why has that become the standard that you're not normal if you aren't drinking on a night out or something? Like can you kind of indulge in that for a little bit? I think that's an
Yeah.
interesting thought.
That's a really good
Yeah.
question.
Well, I kind of wonder also if it depends on the circles that you're running in, right? And that's not to
Yeah.
throw any shade towards your friend group, Chris, or anything like that.
Get
But
some new
I think
friends,
there's just
Chris.
different there's different cultures, right? Like, and it's not to say that there's anything wrong with someone using alcohol in a more responsible manner, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
if they were having a drink, one or two standard drinks while they were out, safely driving home, not doing that regularly, that's a very low risk profile, all things
Yeah.
considered. But
Yep.
there is this question of, right, like why does it seem like, why do people sell so much alcohol at sports venues or at bowling alleys? And when you're going out and we just think about, or just at the end of a long day, right? Pour yourself a stiff drink or something, or sit
Yeah.
down and crack open a beer and relax at like there's these tropes that we think about that have
Mm-hmm.
just to get back to what you guys were saying about marketing. I think that a lot of it just has to do with how these products position themselves in our life, and once they're rooted, it's really hard to roll that back or take that out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I find it interesting how our society doesn't paint a pretty picture about drinking, but it's a decent picture. And there's nothing wrong with, like you said, having an occasional drink or drinking responsibly. By all means, I believe that wholeheartedly. But our society, in the marketing ways, definitely paints a pretty picture for alcohol consumption, and I think that does have a lot to do with the way our society has said it's okay to be intoxicated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Even almost this myth that like good nights are the ones where you drink a lot or you drink too much. It's actually there's been some research that shows that higher BAC levels actually correspond to having a worse time. That
Huh.
people, the more intoxicated they get, you get sloppy, you get tired, bad things happen to you. You have a hangover the next day, you black out, you vomit. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of things that happen when you drink too much that don't happen when you don't drink too much. But
Yeah.
particularly when we think about younger people who might just be starting to do this for the first time, that's not what they hear from other people, and not generally what they do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That.
And what I will say is heartening is that there has been, I feel like, a steady movement towards the folks who are, we'll call them either sober curious or wanting to cut back. I think that I heard more buzz around dry January this year than I've heard any year in recent
Yes.
memory. There was a news article that I saw a month back or so about Whole Foods that their best-selling beer is a non-alcoholic beer.
Hmm.
Their best brand there right now is Athletic, company who makes non-alcoholic beverages. So I think that there is a growing interest as there's more and more news articles coming out about how alcohol is not good for your health, and people are
Yeah.
starting to think about that too.
I'm afraid to admit this, but I'm going to admit this to you guys and to the world. But I noticed my wife has me watching a particular show, and it's called Vanderpump Rules, right?
Oh boy, my
And I'm
ex-wife
not
made me watch that too.
I'm not a huge fan of it, right? But she likes to watch it for the drama. And I'm not putting her business out there, but so I'll sit there on the couch and I'll watch it with her. But what I noticed in especially with this new season that's out is the talk of sober living. Like they were really like I guess the producers or the editors, whoever, they made it to the point where it is brought up at least 4 or 5 times an episode that they are not drinking. They're on non-alcoholic beer, or they're just having iced tea, or they're not, they're not partaking in that sloppiness drinking um escapades or episodes that they had in previous whatever 11 seasons, whatever season they're on now, right? But I pointed that out to my wife and I said, do you see how they're really making it a point to bring this up, that no one is drinking or they're partaking in this sober living? And she was like, yeah, it's a vast change from previous episodes. So I think, you know, I don't know if they're doing it mindfully or they're doing it purposefully, but it's definitely something that I noticed. So it's catching on, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely catching on, and I think that people with a higher profile of life, like celebrities, when they are seen doing something like this, I think that our society reacts in a positive way and tries to follow it. So I kind of think it's cool that they're doing that. Maybe some people that are stuck in substance abuse or alcohol abuse sees this and tries to mimic it.
Well,
Yeah.
I
I
will
would
I will
love.
also tell you this. So in 3 weeks, my wife and I are going out for a weekend in LA, right? We're going up there with some friends to hang out for like, the weekend, obviously. And one of the reservations that they have is at one of these restaurants that is owned by several of these individuals on Vanderpump Rules, right? I'm curious to know because these two male individuals own this restaurant. We're going to go to this restaurant. I'm curious to know if they are selling alcohol because
Hmm.
are they really talking about that life or are they really trying to promote that life?
Yeah,
Like if you're really trying to promote that life, then you take away the alcohol from your restaurant, you know,
Hmm.
offer, Arnold Palmer's, or, just
non-alcoholic
iced tea,
drinks.
non alcoholic drinks. I
Yeah.
really seriously doubt that that they're, they're not going to pull the alcohol. They're definitely
Alcohol
going to have,
consumption, it brings so much money in for businesses, there's no
yeah,
way they're gonna stop, or at least in my
biggest
thought
revenue
process.
generator. Exactly. I'm gonna
Yeah.
have to buy 4 or 5 of these really overpriced drinks at this restaurant while their owners are on
Mhm.
TV talking about I don't want to do alcohol anymore. But I'll sell it to Matt and his wife.
You got to tell us how that goes. I mean, if it would be so bold, you're right, if they didn't sell alcohol, because it is there is such an upcharge and it is such a moneymaker.
Yeah,
But that would be really bold and would be really forward thinking and would really make a statement if they were doing that.
I will let you know when you come back. For your fourth appearance, then I'll let you know how that went. Or when you
Oh
co-host.
man. So if I get a code after three, do I could I have like a Stein for non-alcoholic beer? Could that be the the fourth?
Yeah, and
But
how
no,
much
you made a
do they
really
charge you for? Do they charge you more for the non-alcoholic beer like they would charge you for a beer with alcohol,
that's a really good question. I'd imagine it has to do with how it's made. The de-alcoholization process where they remove it might be like an extra step that other beers don't have to
So,
go
yeah.
through, for example. So I I I do not know. But
Yeah.
while we were on it, I really liked your point about the celebrity endorsements because I got to tell you, like I cannot. There's so many times where you see celebrities with like their whiskey and their gin or their vodka or whatever it is, and
Yeah.
even gambling right now. You've got these celebrities promoting gambling. We were talking a bit
Yes.
about that in the last one. Man, how amazing would it be if you had a celebrity with their brand of non-alcoholic something? You know, like
Yeah.
that would be a step.
To come
Yeah,
out
that
and
would be
say,
interesting to see, and I mean, you are 100% correct. A celebrity does it, a lot of people tend to follow or at least try to mimic what they're doing.
mm-hmm. That's well, if mine split ever blows up, then we'll just be pro non-alcoholic and we'll see how many people follow us, right? So we're
Well,
far
Doc,
from it though.
Doc, I have one other question. I think Matt might have a question or two for you, but I have this one that it's been burning in my head for a while now. And again, it's nothing too crazy or intricate, but what can family members do for someone that is struggling with alcohol use disorder and maybe either is unaware of it or not wanting to admit it? What can family members do for those two?
So that's a really complicated question actually, and it's very individual and it's oftentimes really painful because when family members are concerned, it's usually because they're worried and or they're being hurt like actively by the other person. And that oftentimes means that the drinking has gotten pretty intense. And so when it's brought up, there can be a lot of anger, a lot of defensiveness. It could be very difficult sometimes to get through. And so, in terms of what they can do, I think, again, every situation is different, but the first step would be finding out what the person who's drinking, how they feel about it. Just trying to take their temperature on what's going on. Do they think there's a problem? Have they seen a change? What's their level of motivation for something? Because it might be that it actually is something that they've been feeling uncomfortable about, but really just needed a nudge to get started in a different direction. It can go everywhere from that all the way up to someone who's extremely resistant and who will make choices that really put their relationship to alcohol over their relationship to their family, and where they've got to find themselves in some really tough decision points where their family might leave them, say, for example, before they realize, wait a second, why am I making these choices? This isn't in line with my values. So
Hmm.
it's a process where ideally you can partner with the person who's drinking to try to help them solve their problem in other ways, get them the help that they need, help them get back in touch with their values. But at the end of the day, sometimes families have to protect themselves and their emotional life. And by them doing that, those can serve as very significant wake up calls to people who are drinking, and then they might decide to change.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think setting boundaries is probably first and foremost the best thing to do is set some boundaries, and I believe those boundaries might be a wake up call, like you said, to the person in active addiction. So, and I lied to you because now I got another question with your response. So we've all seen the TV show. I actually saw it a couple days ago, randomly flipping through Hulu, and I saw Intervention. So with interventions, I know they could be good and they could be kind of counterintuitive to what you're trying to do. What are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah. Well, so there are going to be some people who disagree with me about this, and I'll just put that out there. But in my opinion, I would really only look at an intervention as being a last resort. And the reason for that, like a truly last resort, after doing some of the strategies that I've mentioned right now about fostering intrinsic motivation. And the reason
Hmm.
for that is that if someone doesn't want it for themselves, if they're not seeing, if they haven't made that turn, then if you pressure them in a moment to do something or through like a threat of some sort, if they feel threatened, then you might end up getting pushback down the
Yep.
line, or after that moment passes, the resolve, it doesn't have the same staying power necessarily. Now that being said, am currently working with and have worked with people who have had family stage interventions, and that has worked for them and has been very effective in motivating them and moving them. So it's not to say that it can't be effective,
Hmm.
but if there's a way instead for someone to make the choice based on them coming to the conclusion themselves rather than being faced by a room of people who are pressuring them, say for
Yeah.
example,
Yeah.
that would be the preferable of the two, in my opinion.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, I kind of I see that. I feel like it would be kind of, or it could go the other direction if I have five, six of my family members staring at me, telling me what I'm doing wrong. I feel like that kind of would get someone who's in addiction riled up and like defensive.
Right. Well, and that defensiveness ultimately that doesn't take you anywhere positive a lot of the time, you know?
Yep.
So you want to try to approach someone in a way that circumvents that if you can. Again, at a certain point, if you've tried all the things and it's just not working and they're spiraling and you think that that sort of jolt en masse to the system is like a last ditch effort, then absolutely. And again, I have seen it work, but it's I wouldn't put that at the top of the list in terms of places to start.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that answer. I definitely agree with that one.
Well,
Matt, not that I
my
didn't agree
question,
with anything else you said.
yeah, my question for you is, can you tell the audience? You mentioned your LinkedIn, and then and obviously I see you and you're pretty active on LinkedIn. Can you share your how the audience would find you on LinkedIn?
Oh yeah, I think just put my name up in the search bar and I'll pop right up.
Okay.
Um, I think my handle is Weiner PhD, but I'm not sure how you put the handle in the URL. But if you just type my name up there, you'll find me. And I
Okay.
do post probably at least 3 times a week
Yeah,
with
you're
information
pretty
or
active.
news or
Yeah.
new articles.
I
Yeah.
see you. Yeah, you're definitely active, and we appreciate you. And you've shared a couple of episodes. ones that you've been on and then ones that you haven't been on. So we really appreciate your support. So,
Yeah,
you
my
know, I
pleasure. You
just
guys
wanted
are
to
doing a
give you
great
your
job.
flowers now.
Thank you. We appreciate that. And the floor is yours now. Is there anything that you wanted to add in there? Tell our listeners maybe something we didn't cover. The floor is yours, my friend.
Yeah, well, I think I just end with, if there's a listener and you are feeling like either you might have a problem with alcohol, someone in your family, I just really want to encourage you to reach out to supports. There's often physicians are great for this in terms of if you are having the problem, your physician is your friend. You can talk to them. They can direct you towards options. There's bunches of resources through NIAAA, the National Institute of Alcoholism and Alcohol Abuse, is I think what that stands for. But in terms of connecting you to information, to treatment services, how to judge them and there's all sorts of resources that are out there. Addiction, alcohol in particular, it's something that oftentimes grows either in secret or because it's been normalized. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're feeling insecure about it, I'd encourage you to open up about it with people you trust. Don't just keep it to yourself. And that can lead you to someplace better than where you are right now.
Well, Dr.
Awesome.
Weiner, thank you so much.
Yeah, that was a powerful outro. I think that hopefully someone that's struggling listens to that and makes a move, because that was very powerful in the way you delivered it. So thank you for that.
My pleasure. Thanks again for having me here.
Yeah, absolutely. We're scheduling part 4 already. Don't You'll get an invite soon.
Well, Doc, thanks so much again for being on the show this week, and you're welcome back anytime. Obviously, you know that because you
Been
keep
back.
coming back. You say yes when we ask you, right? So, um, but yeah, thank you, and we wish you all the best, and thank you so much for the information and lending your advice. I mean,
Yeah.
you're just a great human being. So, thank you so much.
Oh, well,
Yeah,
thank
I
you.
co-sign that. I definitely appreciate you and your knowledge and even just your friendliness. It goes a long way. So we do appreciate that.
Oh, thanks, guys. Well,
All
you
right.
too. Always happy to collaborate.
Yes, sir.
Till next week, guys. We'll talk to you soon.
See you
Take
guys
care.
next week.